Greetings, everyone. My name is Duke, health educator here for Black Men's Exchange National, and I'm joined here with Kashama Sankofa and DeQuela Hopper. Say hi, everyone.
Peace, family.
And DeQuela, for those who don't know, has recently joined our team. DeQuela, if you would give them a little bit of information about yourself, that'd be great.
Hello, beautiful people. My name is DeQuela Hopper. I am the member services navigator for Black Men's Exchange as well as Black Women's Exchange.
Exciting. Yes. So I just have a couple of comments that I'll go through. Last time we all were with you was on January 8th. We discussed goal digging, creating successful behavior patterns in order to achieve our goals. Of course, as it was our first live stream of the year, we had a lot of shout outs of just saying, yay, welcome back from our friend and family, Nadraj Holmes. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Please spell it out phonetically in the comments for me at some point, brother. Also, Omar Sankofa had mentioned that our take-home assignment, which was a medical apartheid, a book that goes over the racist history of experimental practices on Black people in the medical industry. Omar Sankofa had mentioned, wow, that was such a heavy read. It took them months to finish, which is why we gave it to you all in January. So hopefully you can achieve it and get through that within the year. In addition, we just had a friend and family of Travis Wise mentioning Speak at a certain point during the live stream. We was giving out a lot of gems. Soga Upendo, another family member, said, Happy New Year, family. Love seeing BMX contributing to advocate for and our people's wholeness and wellness. Such great to hear from you all. As always, if you leave comments, there's a chance for them to be highlighted in the next live stream. In addition to that, and I don't see it at the bottom at this time, maybe it will come up. Please join our community number by texting. Yep, our social media manager has it. If you text 410-826-6264, you can get connected directly with our community and hear from Duke, from me, Kashama, DeQuela, Adam, and whoever else decides to join in for our discussions. If you happen to have any suggestions for a take-home assignment or want to discuss a take-home assignment, please let us know inside of our community. It'd be really, really great to hear from you all. With that, can we go into what is our take-home assignment for this week? All right. I just want to highlight a couple of comments here. Aisha Jones said timely topics. We try to keep it timely. Thank you for joining with us. And Bongani said salutations. Happy New Year. Good to see you, brother Ashe. So, Crack, what did y'all think about this film?
Well, so I'm relatively young. So before watching the Crack documentary, a large bulk of my knowledge came from pop culture movies like New Jack City, Paid in Full, which is safe to say they pretty much glamorize selling these life-destroying drugs. But so I like the documentary Crack because it did an excellent job of really showcasing the humanity of the people that suffered and continue to suffer today, both sellers and users of that detrimental drug.
Kashama, I'm pretty sure you were probably aware of most of the information in the film, but was there anything that stuck out to you?
Well, yeah, actually, I don't want to give too much away in the film because I do want our viewing audience to go back and watch it. But I will say this, that I was born in 1986, and my early childhood was at the height of the crack epidemic, really. And I would constantly hear the narrative from adults around me about planes and ships, being used to bring in. What's up, brother Bangani? I see you. Greetings, brother. Planes and ships being used to bring in drugs to be, sold in our neighborhoods. And I mean, I trusted the adults around me, but it wasn't until I actually got, grown and learned this narrative about Reagan and the government and, what was going on back then in the 80s that, that set up this situation where crack cocaine could take our communities by storm. And it was the perfect storm, based off of the economic conditions that were going on at the time. But what I learned from the movie, or what I didn't know, was that there was a concerted effort by people like Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and people in our community to hold the government accountable. And there were people actually, this narrative that I heard growing up, it wasn't just around grown people, in the living room or the parlor, discussion. This was an actual legitimate narrative that was being, pushed by our advocates. And so while the movie made me angry, it always makes me angry to think of what they did to us during the crack epidemic. It also it gave me some sense of a little bit of redemption, knowing that some of our people did kick up some dust around what was happening, and that we weren't just being completely gaslighted.
Good evening, Norma Dean. Good to see you, and thank you for joining us from Philadelphia. For those who don't know, because we haven't always made it expressingly clear, I'm based in Baltimore. DeQuayla is based in Baltimore. Kashama is based in Florida, but he's up here in Baltimore briefly, very, very briefly.
Yeah, the undisclosed location.
Moving around, but they'll be back to their hometown very, very shortly. What I wanted to mention about the film, and again, this is all encouragement and hope that you all will watch it. This film goes in depth, as Kashama mentioned, about how crack actually made it into our communities, the impact of it, again, as DeQuayla mentioned, from the seller and the user side, and its long-standing effects on our community. But something that I took away from the film that was a little bit outside of it, I just remember my mother sitting down and talking with me about how Black community used to be and act as community, where we would say hello to everyone. We would sit on our stoops and everything would be fine. There was not so much fear around being around other Black people. And this film touches on that briefly in the beginning, because it shows how there was this gradual decline of civility amongst us as this drug has started to insert itself in our communities in a way that it did. You had individuals who were extremely poor. It talks about the amount of unemployment that was in the Black community just prior to cocaine entering our communities. And then when this drug entered, how easy it was for certain individuals who had never seen money before to just all of a sudden own cars and things in the neighborhood, and how that changes a person's personality and things like that. And funny enough, I just thought about it, but we hear about this thing called affluenza amongst white people who commit crimes, who have all this money, and then they're sent away, and it's like, oh well, they have affluenza, we can't hold them accountable, but this kind of dialogue,
they have a warped sense of reality, is what you're saying. The affluenza, everyone may not be familiar with affluenza because it's bullshit. It's BS, but it's a thing supposedly among So what you'll hear, in case I didn't clear it, so occasionally you'll hear stories of white kids who usually are driving recklessly, probably drunk driving, may even run someone over. This may actually kill someone as a result of their behaviors. But they come from a particularly quote unquote rich family. In court, it can be argued that they suffer from a condition called affluenza, which is not a mental disorder. It's not a medical thing. What it is a psychological term in order to erase guilt from this particular individual, because the idea is that because they have so much wealth and money compared to the other people that they may network or be around who have actual responsibilities, then they have not been given the tools necessary to know how to behave in a proper society. And so that term is called affluenza, and people have absolutely gotten away with literal murder because of it. And so when I think about
My Community, and I'm thinking about how it actually, this film talks about the actual ways in which drug dealers, who we have, because of the way society works, has demonized and put in this idea that they deserve no value, no system of care, and they deserve all the bad that happens to them. When you look at this community and shows the level of unemployment to the all of a sudden instant wealth that happened in the community. There was no type of argument of quote unquote affluenza to erase that. But I just wanted to point that out. It was something I literally just thought about on this spot. Aisha Jones said Gary Webb book Dark Alliance about drug trade, government, and organized crime involvement and conspiracy. Thank you. I don't know about this book. Have y'all heard about this before?
No, I haven't.
So what I want you to do, Aisha Jones, because this most likely is going to be put in one of our take-home assignments. Thank you for offering this. If you text our community number with this particular suggestion, we can make sure it's put in a folder and a collected log so that we can pull on these particular resources, because it's not all from us, it's from you too. Thank you. Text 410-826-6264 to sign up to join our community. Thank you for that suggestion. So with that, I think we can begin to move on. It's the same topic, but we're talking about needle exchanges, risk reduction, and what happened to drug prevention. And I landed on this topic because I'm aware of needle exchange programs, and we'll get into a little bit of detail about exactly what that is. But I'm also aware of how the conversation on how to deal with drug abuse in our communities has changed, and the people inside of my communities who don't do drugs or just navigating around substance abuse users have not quite gotten the same rhetoric or lesson plans or understanding of exactly what is quote unquote risk reduction and why is it needle exchange. Needle exchange is considered a controversial program, and some of us on this particular panel may have different views on what needle exchange is good for or bad for, but this is one of the latest efforts in order to curb substance abuse usage. Bongani, absolutely. Rick James did say that cocaine is a hell of a drug. I promise you, if you watch Crack in this documentary, you will see exactly how everyone was impacted by this particular substance and who got away with its uses and who didn't. But with that being said, have you all heard about needle exchange programs before, and what are your thoughts on it?
I've heard of them. In addition to those, I put them in the category of there's also a thing called shooting galleries. I've heard of something like that, or safe spaces for people to use. I've heard them referred to as shooting galleries by somebody. I'm not, as knowledgeable on the subject, but I mean, I think it's an approach that is long overdue. But shouldn't be confused with drug prevention or treatment. I look at it honestly as more of a public health, type of thing. Whereas, it's just better for public health to try to control, the use and exchange of needles that are happening in the population. It's in the best interest of the public to kind of control where and how people use drugs, and and if they do overdose, them having the services and tools there at hand to recover. So that's something I think that it benefits us as a whole, as a society, and it's more so like a something that you do like a Band-Aid. It's not addressing the problem at all. It's just kind of keeping things from getting to places. It's keeping certain undesirable outcomes from happening.
Right.
I'll say that.
Did you have any other thoughts, Daquila?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Harm reduction approaches do work, but like he said, it's a Band-Aid. Safe consumption sites have been proven to reduce overdose fatalities, but again, it's a Band-Aid. Now, there's a more human approach to diseases of despair like drug abuse and misuse. Instead of throwing the book at users of illicit drugs, we're seeing harm reduction tactics. But the fact is that if a person is using mind-altering substances, more than likely, they're not doing it for their health, but rather to numb the pain of the effects of living in a society that doesn't care about them.
Just a reminder for people, the reason why we're talking about this subject again is because it came out towards the end of last year that substance abuse usage as well as overdoses have increased by 30%. If I'm not mistaken, domestic violence incidents increased by the same amount over the course of this particular pandemic. And as I have said many times during our live streams, even if you aren't someone who is using substances to navigate in this particular society, there's a good chance that someone you know may be. And so this is an opportunity to educate yourself and work with your community in order to make sure they get the resources that they need. Thankfully, we have Daquila Hopper here, who is a member service navigator. And at some point, her splash screen will be up for anyone that may want to reach out to her to help get some resources, particularly in the Baltimore metropolitan area. But we will do our best to connect you with resources outside of that area if you happen to be in a different state. I see Elena Latham said, peace and blessings, kings and queen. Absolutely. It's so great to see and hear from you. So for those who don't know, needle exchange sites, and so this is why it may be a little controversial. So there's many layers to how they go about this process. And to my knowledge, most of them do work with a member service navigator of some sort, but the primary role of needle exchange is this. We know that substance abuse users who use injection method materials in order to get their drug and their psychedelics, there's a chance that they're sharing their needles with other individuals. And this is a particularly dangerous incident for multiple reasons. One, there may not be enough opportunity to clean the needles in between usage. And so therefore there could be a leftover residue of some other substance or segment. I'm sorry, I was reading the comment. Substance inside of that needle that can harm the next individual who decides to intake it, as well, because this is a substance that goes directly into the bloodstream, and the needle itself is going into the bloodstream. It is a way for one to carry or contact viruses inside the bloodstream. And so there is cases where individuals actually do catch HIV because they have been sharing needles amongst other individuals and did not know their particular sexual health status. So this is a way that HIV transmits outside of sexual incidents. And this is a particular dangerous precedent in our particular
hepatitis as well.
Hepatitis as well. Thank you for adding that. So when you look at needle exchanges, the idea is that don't use the same needle twice, right? Especially if you're sharing it with other individuals. And so needle exchange sites, what they do is they will encourage and aid individuals to throw away their needles, and then that particular exchange site will supply them with a new clean needle. And this is their form of risk reduction or prevention in order to help make sure that overdoses do not occur. And this is important because as far as the leftover residue, it only takes a very, very small amount for someone to become overdosed. And so if someone did not properly eject all of the substance inside of that needle and then they put new substance in and then they squeeze, it could be disastrous for that particular individual. And so the idea is get rid of your needle, and this medical site will give you a new needle for you to do your business. And the reason why this has been controversial in our particular communities is because some people in our communities is just like, why are we giving them needles to do what we don't want them to do? But as we've mentioned before, this is a necessary Band-Aid tactic and actually treating people like humans who are addicted to something. It's not easy to get rid of an addiction. And so this is one of those platforms. Have you all encountered situations where you were in a debate or witnessed people who were in discussion about whether or not they agree with needle exchanges or not? Or what were your takeaways from that particular incident?
No, I haven't really been in that situation, but I just want to ask you guys if you remember the DARE campaign.
Oh God.
How well did that work? even though funding for the DARE campaign, federal funding, stopped 2 years before I was born, I remember the DARE Lion, but worse, the police officers coming into my elementary classrooms telling me to stay away from drugs. Like, it was almost like a fear tactic. And then we wonder why, or we don't wonder why, that campaign didn't work. So what type of drug prevention do you guys remember growing up, and were they effective?
So I know one of them is in the film. which was Just Say No, which
Yeah,
was
right.
which was an
Crazy
encouragement
idea.
from Ronald Reagan's wife. Just Say No, which did not work. Their program, which was very, very similar to Just Say No. It was like
Right.
they had all the evidence and everything that they needed to say that Just Say No did not work. And then they reintroduced Just Say No under a new name called Dare.
Right.
I don't remember the name of this program. Maybe someone can help me. But I remember there was like these Muppets that came to my elementary school, and it was like a Miss Nicotine or something, and like she
Oh
was
my.
maybe someone in the comment. I don't remember these things, but there was these puppets and Muppets and people that would dress up in these different costumes. It looked like Sesame Street, but for substance abuse users. And they came, they did a tour. They did it in many different elementary schools, at least in East America. I don't know what happened over there, but they did this tour, and these were individuals in order to encourage young children to know the signs of substance abuse, and how to avoid it and the effects that it would have on your life. And so they had these particular ones. The one that I remember the most was Miss Nicotine. And sadly enough, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I remember Miss Nicotine because she had like this attitude, like this, like it was like this person that I could actually see. So I need to look that up. That was a really, really great question. Do you know any programs that you remember to tackle?
I went through Dare.
Yeah.
I went through Dare, and Dare was a benefit to me. And I'm just saying that being honest, but I'm not that's not the story for everybody.
Right.
And the only reason I would say Dare benefited me is because it gave me a thorough education on what was what in regards to drugs. Growing up, all I knew about was crack and reefer. That's within my community. That's all. They didn't even have heroin. Wasn't popular down south. Opioids wasn't, like
Right.
it was up north. So crack and what they call reefer was all I knew. But when I would be in school, and Dare would educate me on actually, what is heroin, what are opioids, what are barbiturates, what are uppers, downers. Dare actually introduced the idea of nicotine being a drug, because I didn't see it that way as a child. I grew up around a bunch of cigarette smokers, and it was just the thing to do. It was just what grown people did, right? We had candy cigarettes as children,
Right.
and it wasn't. If you had told my dad he was using drugs in front of me, he would have told you that's not true. I'm not using drugs. This isn't a drug. So Dare did educate me on a lot, but what Dare did not do was give me the self-conceptual health and the ability to care about myself, not to do, certain things. That came from family and community.
Mentioned that Just Say No was an intentional failure designed to create a smokescreen while our communities were being ravaged by the police. And absolutely correct about that. You will find no arguments on this side. In fact, it was questionable even for a bunch of the public audience when it was introduced, because people knew exactly which communities was dying off at this particular time, and Just Say No did not deal with the actual addiction of this particular drug. Adam McMath mentioned to our question about remembering campaigns, your brain on drugs at the Proud Egg commercial. Yeah, so it was like, so the idea was, I think they just cracked the egg, put it in a frying pan. It was like, it said this egg is your brain, and then they put it in a frying pan. It was like becoming scrambled. It was like, and this is your brain on drugs,
which is one of the most unscientific, explanations. And honestly, it does more harm than good, because what you do is you delegitimize the narrative that drugs are bad. Because right now you're coming across to me as an idiot. And now, you know what I'm saying? Everything you said has been delegitimized. So when my peers are coming to me and saying, hey, this is the new party drug, blah, 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 I know that what you said isn't true, but I don't necessarily know to say that, hey, this is going to have me strung out in 20 years.
Lena Latham mentioned parents would send their kids to the store to get their cigarettes in my day, and I'm here to tell you that is still happening. And I really I'm so glad you mentioned this because I haven't made any particular campaign on this, but I need to start talking to my friends who do smoke and who has kids. And I need to ask them, like, are you doing this? Are you sending your child, once they turn 14, 15, whatever, down the store with a note? Because now they got to put a little note with it in order, in order to get around some things. Because that's just not right. Like it is not setting up your child to have good health conceptual values and self-conceptual values, especially if you're helping your child aid you in a sickness. Like if you're going to do and smoke cigarettes, that's all your business. But please don't encourage and help someone else to engage in your addiction, especially one that is, in fact, all substance abuses are manageable. I want to make that clear. But nicotine is one of those ones that's very, very, very manageable in a human context. But it's so interesting because I remember working in the hotel industry. I used to get mad because I had coworkers who were smokers and they were given extra breaks just so they could just so they could smoke. And I was just like, what is happening? Like, we get the same paycheck and they would get extra breaks just so they could catch their breath. So it's definitely one of those things. But nicotine is one of those things that's been like married. I'm going to fight Adam. But nicotine is one of those things that's just been like married to like this American lifestyle and life. And so there's been so much space made to consume it as if it's like not a bad thing. Right. Speaking of which, I remember, I'm not remembering it right now, but there was this campaign against smoking. It had a lot of orange color backgrounds and like pixelated letters.
Yep.
Truth campaign, which I heard much later. I don't know if this is true, y'all, but it was funded by cigarette companies as their way of saying that they.
Well, there were lawsuits. Well, no, there were lawsuits that were won against the cigarette companies, and as a condition of those lawsuits, they had to put a certain amount of money towards funding education around nicotine abuse. Okay. And the call, so that's where that comes from. But also, I would like to take a chance to give a shout out to NAPTN, which is an anti-nicotine, which is a Black organization that is anti-nicotine, and they focus on our community. I'm about to find the actual name of NAPTN in a second. Y'all is based out of North Carolina. I'm about to find it real quick because I want to give them a shout out.
All right. Well, while you're searching, I'm going to just read this comment. Lena mentioned that they were almost a smoker for 20 plus years and didn't stop until their son was born 4 years ago. Now I can't stand to smell them. Ain't that the truth? I've dealt with so many individuals and like you love them to death and then you hug them and like, because it really, especially for us Black people, it goes all in our hair. Okay. Like it really lingers and it is not an appealing sexy smell, but so blessings to you on your journey. I'm thank you for keeping yourself up, one, Lena, and then two, thank you for keeping your son in context about this particular subject. I think for me, my friends who smoke, whatever, do what you do, but there will absolutely be no smoking in my kitchen. I can't stand it. It drives me insane. Like, do not do it around my products and goods. While Kashama is still looking for that, I know part of the reason why I really wanted to do this discussion is because I feel that it's impossible to talk about drug prevention, risk reduction, harm reduction, everything when it comes to crack cocaine or injection method, particular substance abuses, without talking about the ways that the laws have changed when navigating in this particular field, right? Back during the Reagan era and then continuing forth with, I believe, George Bush's father first, they had did this in, the war on drugs. And, I feel I don't want to stay on this subject, but it is something that we should really, really dive into. So the war on drugs was very specifically about engaging. If you found the type, you can bring it in if you found that company.
No, you froze a little bit. I think it might be on my end.
Okay, all right. So the war on drugs, which was intentionally about setting up drug sellers and users as the ultimate criminals in our society, right? They were more heinous than murderers at this particular time. And to be very clear, substance abuse sellers were known to be high homicidal figures in our communities during the time. So be very, very clear about that. Far as protecting that particular drug turf and the war and the PTSD that our communities might have suffering as a result of them trying to keep their money in silos. So, but during this time, substance abuse users, in addition, right, were treated as criminals, like actual people that would get lifetime imprisonment because they injected particular drugs. And this was an ongoing precedent. And they talked about in something that I was quite unaware of. At least they go about this in the film, but it's just about how many Black women were actually scapegoated over and tied into the drug system during the war on drugs. So the war on drugs had multi layers, right? So the war on drugs was about killing and detaining Black men, right, who were mostly seen as the sellers of this particular substance. And then it was about detaining and removing Black women from the communities who were seen as the users. And so, and they talk about the traumas that goes about, like, you got to think about it, like when you see so much unemployment, when you see your children killed out on the streets, when you see all of this disparity in your communities, you start using drugs in order to not feel anything. Right. And so they started to criminalize people who were trying to deal with trauma. And this is what our community had to deal with. It has done disastrous effects on our community. But highlighting this particular story is the fact that even while all of this was going on, even while Black communities were being absolutely ravaged and destroyed by crack cocaine, we weren't the number one users. At any point during that era. We were not the number one users of crack or cocaine during the 80s. And so something that Dr. Cleo Manago had pointed out to me one time, I don't know, I'm sure Kashama has heard this before. And I've also heard a TV pundit, I don't remember his name at this time, say it before too. But when you think of the term crack house, Daquila, what do you think of? When you hear the term crack house, what do you think of?
New York City.
You said New York City?
No, New Jack City, the movie, where it was just like an apartment or wherever that was with just people doing crack and other drugs and just everybody strung out. And yeah, but that's a crack house though.
And this is for the audience too, before I say it. When I say the term crack house, who are you thinking about? What communities are you thinking about when you hear the term crack house? If anyone wants to offer. Because what was interesting is that what Dr. Cleo Manago pointed out in this TV pundit, they said that the highest usage of crack cocaine happened to be oftentimes in white college dormitories, but there was no name associated to this. Like you wouldn't call a white college dormitory a crack house.
Right.
You should say that was their room. But there was no socialization to contextualize these individuals as criminals and substance abuse users during this time, even when they were selling drugs and co-opting mafias to do it. Yes?
I'll add something to that too. I mean, what generally called crack houses were really just abandoned houses.
Absolutely.
Where anything could go down because it's abandoned. And the reason that you have these buildings saturating our communities is because of the economic, peril that we're placed in. I mean, so it's a cycle, but I mean, just adding on to that, like it's so many layers to it. You're calling it a crack house when it's just
an abandoned building. It was not a house to begin with. And you got to think about the way that it plays on the socialization in the mind of the people when they're trying to have, and we get into a whole nother subject here, but when they're trying to create a dissonance around their cognitive ability to perceive individuals as criminals, right? So it's like, in order to do this, I got to think, they're doing this to their children and blah, blah, blah. Another thing that the crack film highlights and exposes is the myth of how rampant children born on addicted to crack were when they criminalized Black mothers who were users and saying that they were destroying their babies' lives. And they talk about in this film like the actual science that was missing when they decided to publish these articles and run this in the media. I'm going to read a couple of comments here. Lena said the crack documentary on Netflix discusses the negative impact on Black women and how these laws destroy the Black family, in particular Black mothers. Thank you, Lena, for that. Soga mentioned that due to needle exchange programs also build relationships with those suffering from addiction to link them to treatment at some point. Great question. The truth about that answer is it depends on which one. So every particular needle exchange program does not come equipped with the same amount of resources and services. Some of them are just strictly invested in getting you a clean needle. And while others are connected with actual medical professionals and social workers who are engaged in trying to help the individual retain their family communal bonds and get a fresh start in life. So it all depends on which one you're going to and how you're getting connected to these particular needle exchange programs, much like anything in life. Sadly, when it comes to the medical industry, it depends on where you're going for your health and your service. Kashab, if you could take this a couple of comments here.
Yeah, I was just about to say there's a comment from Ma'at Apothecary that's it's very sad and touching. It says, my mom died at age 34 after years of crack abuse in Oakland. It literally destroyed my family when I was 17. And I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry you went through that, Ma'at.
Thank you for sharing that. In the spirit of vulnerability, I will share that my father was a substance abuse user, and I saw him go through the motions with this particular drug. And I saw, the belt tightening around the arm. I saw the spoon with the lighter and heating it up. He used to heat my milk bottle, I found out later, the same way sometimes, in order to give to me. And so another reason why I'm going to share this because I lacked the ability to contextualize and humanize my father during that time. As a child, all I thought was, I got a deadbeat dad, right? This is the narrative that I put out there in the community amongst myself and amongst my friends and family and whoever would listen. I had a deadbeat dad, as opposed to the fact that I had a father who was struggling with a real addiction, and it caused him to make the most heinous decisions throughout his life. And he did try to get better on different times, but it's so hard to do it on your own. And that's the thing that we often forget is, as a Black person, when it comes to your medical health, you're often on your own, unless, so glad, I forget her name. You had introduced me to this sister, Kashama, but we had a special guest who talked about that medical, being engaged in your wealth is so much better as a collective. Talking about Black people coming together and really engaging in community is so much better when we are, trying to hold each other.
About Lisa Davis?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Lisa Davis.
Excuse me, that Nat Penn is the National African American Tobacco Prevention Network. So that's NAATPN. And they're ran by some great brothers and sisters down there in North Carolina who I've met personally. But I want to bring something to mind when you started talking about community, Duke. This is an interesting experiment that took place in the 1970s with mice, and it's called the Rat Park experiment. And if any of y'all are familiar with it, or if you're not, just look it up. It's on YouTube and everything. But it first starts out with these mice, and they use morphine as the substance. And so they give these mice, they're caged up, by themselves. And, all they have is a thing of water, food, and a thing of morphine, right? And the mice, of course, they get addicted to the morphine, and they prefer the morphine over water at a certain point. These same mice, as well as other mice, were then taken to another location where they had other mice, as well as toys and just like a little rat theme park. Everything a little mouse could want, right? In its midst, and plenty of space to roam and run and play and frolic and interact with other mice. Establish a community. They put the water there, they put the food there, and they put the morphine there. What they found was that the mice preferred their water and food to morphine all day when they were happy and had community around them and when they weren't stressed. And some of them who like to get a little buzz, like to turn up every now and then, would go and hit the I'm dead serious. It would go and hit the morphine dispenser every now and then, but it was nowhere near compared to. There were no overdoses, one, and it was no way compared to the usage that they, the frequency at which they used it when they were in the other environment. And I think that's very interesting. And they knew this in the 70s, but yet you had people, this is your brain on drugs, acting like it was just that simple and not applying any type of science or social science to this issue. But now, when the face doesn't look like me, you, and DeQuayla, right? Now we want to be all compassionate. We want to look at it from a scientific and from a public health standpoint. And while I think that's a good thing, it angers me, and it's a tragedy that it didn't happen for us decades ago. A lot of families could still be intact. Your father probably didn't have to have the experience that he had. I probably didn't have to see relatives going through things that they went through.
Mm-hmm. For those looking to join us in this conversation, the link is now live. If you click on that link and follow it through, our social media manager will help you connect with us, talk with DeQuayla, Kashama, and myself. We are limited on time, so of course we would just love for you to come in, bring your commentary or your question, and we discuss it, and then we'll politely move on. But we really do want to hear from you, so please join on in. With that being said, I'm thinking about also how the war on drugs, speaking how they decided how they were going to deal with Black men in the community, because even if they didn't have drugs on them at the time, if they caught a friend of theirs who had drugs, they would split that and then put it on that Black man, and then both of them going to jail right at that particular time. And so it was such a devastating ways to destroy Black community and Black family, with the ways that they decided to disrespect and destroy Black mothers, the ways that they got rid of in so many people were innocent during this time. This was the other thing. When you think about who was the sellers of drugs, it wasn't that many, and it couldn't be that many because there was only so many heads of who controlled money in our particular communities, and so they just got rid of so many of us.
Now, something interesting to consider too, Duke, is that even before the so-called war on drugs, or the war on Black people with the crack epidemic, you got to understand that the origins of drug laws, even from the 1930s, where they came about due to racist narratives about Black men in particular. And in some states that are closer to the Mexican border, that narrative was also placed on Mexican men. And so cocaine as well as marijuana were both legal at a certain point, but they were made illegal. And the push to make them illegal,
I'm very aware
of that Black men would get high off these substances and were oversexed and would rape white women.
Yeah, I'm very aware of the marijuana story. I'm very aware. I forgot about that actually, but I'm so glad you put that to the forefront. Marijuana was legal, and it was just all of a sudden decided once Black men were using it a lot, that this was a way. I'm not aware of the cocaine one. You're educating me here.
Cocaine was in Coca-Cola.
You're right. Cocaine was legal, and they also talk about it in the film because it was something that rich white people was doing, right? So this was the thing that they had in the films, smoking everything. It was great. But once Black communities had access to these drugs, all of a sudden this is a problem. This is a crisis. this is horrible for civilization. Once Black people got a hold of these drugs, and so it's always something to consider. Reading messages.
It's like how guns weren't a problem until the Panthers stormed up in the Capitol in California. Guns weren't an issue in California until that happened.
So with that being said, as always, we are here to help and assist in the best ways that we know how. DeQuayla is not the only member service navigator that we have. She's just the only one that's licensed to talk on our live streams. But DeQuayla is working with a team of individuals in order to help navigate people to services that they may need. Again, even if this is not specifically for yourself, if you want to pass some information along, trusted, so that way a professional navigator can reach out to that individual just to do a check-in. There's no obligation, but a check-in to see if that person would like some resources or some help, maybe getting at least to some needle exchange programs as a start in order to make sure that they're starting to take care of their health in some kind of way. Reach out to our team. If you want to text the community number in order to let someone know to reach out to them, you can absolutely do that. Again, that number is actually scrolling by at the bottom of the screen right now. We have 410-826-6264. A member service navigator can reach out to you from there. DeQuayla, I believe you have a professional email that you could, I don't think we have it typed up in a thing, but you could give us the email.
I do. It is DeQuaylaH@bmxnational.org.
bmxnational.org, yes. DeQuayla spelled exactly how you see it on screen. If you need help because you don't have great eyes, that is D as in dog, I as in insight, Q as in Quayla. U as in universe, A as in apple, Y as in you, L as in log, A as in apple. DeQuayla at bmxnational.org.
DeQuayla H.
DeQuayla H, yes.
DeQuayla
H, I'm so sorry, H as in Hopper. You see it right there. So it'd be really, really great if you would, do your part in the community to assist. And even if you just want to find out a little bit more information, thank you. Our social media manager be on it, right? He be on it. You see that? But even if you just want to, if you have nothing as far as an individual that you want to suggest, if you just want to find out a little bit more information, still feel free to reach out. We are happy to assist. Here on these health education live streams, I don't think anyone has joined us, so we are getting ready to prepare to wrap up. But with that being said, health education live streams, are ongoing practice, and we will be coming back to you every month, at least 2 Fridays out of the month, in order to discuss health disparities in our community. I know that the very next one, we're going to be in Black History Month, y'all. So the topic for the next one is discussing the John Henry sickness. If you don't know what that is, be prepared to find out on February 5th.
That's my birthday.
Oh, yes. Yay.
Oh,
February 5th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll find out if DeQuayla will join us on the 5th. We'll find out. But happy birthday to you beforehand. And this is also a time for our community, just in case we don't see DeQuayla. So with that being said, my name is Duke, and I'm getting ready to log out. Thank you for joining us for this health education live stream.
Peace, family.
Peace, guys.
Ooh.